Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode, we're doing Who Is Better. The topic for this Who Is Better? Rob Van Dam and Sabu. Sometimes partners, sometimes enemies. In real life, seem to be really good friends. Two ECW legends. Two guys that helped revolutionize pro wrestling and make it what it is today. With that being said, if you haven't seen any of these videos before, there's going to be 8 separate categories we rate them in. Each category we grade on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. At the end, we total up the points they get. Whoever has the most points win. There will be a chance for bonus points at the end, so stay tuned for that. And to kick it off with our first category, technical wrestling, we're going to start with Rob Van Dam. RVD gets a 4 here, and for me, it's not that he's bad and he's not in that upper echelon, it's just that Rob's offense seemed to be more striking, more high-flying, a lot of kicks involved. Because of that, he really wasn't a chain wrestler, he wasn't a submission guy. The closest thing we could say to technical masterpieces he had were the matches with Jerry Lynn, which you can put in that category. But over the rest of his career, he's just, I would say, at the 4 level, which basically puts him a B or a B+. So yeah, right there at a 4. For Sabu, Sabu's getting a 3. Sabu's whole style was just him being reckless. Whether that be him just throwing his body at you, throwing the chair at you, kicking you in the face, punching you in the head, hitting you with a spike. Everything about him was more of a wild fury. He didn't really have technical matches, and that's not to say he couldn't do it. Sabu understood his character, and his character was that wild, crazy guy. This is about where I would put someone like a Bruiser Brody as well. Someone that isn't bad at it, it's just not part of their character, really. Next up, striking. For RVD, RVD is getting a 5. For his time, Rob Van Dam had some of the best kicks in wrestling. I would say him, Sean Waltman, Tajiri were probably the 3 guys that threw the best kicks at that time frame, and you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody that could match that. I think this is one of the things he absolutely excels in, hence why he gets a 5. On the other side, Sabu. Sabu's also going to get a 5. Sabu's striking was a little bit more haphazard, more dangerous looking, and the way I look at a Sabu match is the same way I look at a punk rock band. You take a band like, let's say, Queen, and you watch a Queen concert, and they're so technically proficient that they never mess up. There's never a missed beat. There's never something off time. Freddie Mercury's voice is always impeccable. Then you look at someone like Black Flag, and Black Flag is more like Sabu, where the guitarist might be off, or they may miss a note, or the singer, whether it be Henry Rollins or whoever else was the singer at the time, decides that instead of singing, they're going to dive into the crowd for the song. That's kind of the energy that Sabu brought. And he kind of is, the vibe of ECW is Sabu. It was dangerous, it was reckless, it was revolutionary, it was different, and that's exactly what he is. He threw caution into the wind, and more often than not, he looked like he was really hurting himself or the other person, and sometimes he did. And sometimes he would fail, which is an underrated part of Sabu's offense that I don't think it's talked about enough. Sabu has gone on record and said that sometimes he would botch a move on purpose just to give you that feeling that anything can happen at any time. And I really love that about him, and that again goes back to that punk rock vibe where he's just trying anything to see what works. He gets a 5 here. I think they're both awesome in this category. Next up, how they perform as a heel. For Rob Van Dam, he's getting a 5, and it's specifically for one thing. His time in ECW as Mr. Monday Night. As the cocky guy that was always threatening to leave ECW to go to WWE or go to WCW and show up on Monday night. I really love that run, especially his little bit where he was tied in with Jerry Lawler and the anti-ECW thing. I thought it was really great. It showed that Van Dam could really be that cocky heel. Now, part of that is, being that cocky heel, sometimes, more often than not, the fans start gravitating to that guy, whether it be him, whether it be Ric Flair, even a guy like Triple H, who's played the I'm better than you heel. The fans eventually start loving that character, which happened with Van Dam. That, coupled with the fact that he had some of the best offense ever, made him a face by default. But yeah, I really enjoyed his heel stuff there. For Sabu, Sabu's getting a 4. Kind of on a similar vein, especially when they were both part of that same angle. The only thing that puts Sabu a little bit lower for me is I always feel like no matter how dastardly or how much a heel Sabu wanted to be, the Sabu fans always loved him. If he was a heel, if he was a face, no matter what he was a face, basically. It didn't matter who he was facing. You could have him against the most popular guy in the company or the most hated heel, and the fans were absolutely going to cheer for Sabu. I think he did well. I think he played the part well. But to me, he's just a bit short of Van Dam, because I do think that Van Dam was able to turn the fans and make them hate him a little bit more than Sabu was. So that's why there's that little difference here. Next up, how they perform as a babyface. As you could guess, both these guys are getting a 5. They're two of the most beloved wrestlers in ECW history, and Rob Van Dam is one of the most beloved wrestlers of the last 30 years, period. And the only reason that Sabu isn't loved more on the mainstream is because the run he had in WCW was very short, and the run he had in WWE was not Sabu, it was Sabu Light. He was watered down, he was broken down a lot, because you got to remember that's 15-20 years into his career, and he had been through all the wars in ECW, FMW, and anywhere else where he can ply his trade. But anytime either of these guys stepped in a ring, the fans loved them. That's why they both get 5s. Next up, promo. This is probably the weakness of both of these men. For Rob Van Dam, he's getting a 2. And Rob has said it himself that most of his career, especially his WWE run, where he was just a dude or cool guy, kind of what Matt Riddle is if you don't remember those promos. He kind of wasn't allowed to be himself. He was allowed to be more of himself in ECW, but at no point do I think he was one of the best talkers in ECW, and as a matter of fact, I think he was kind of subpar. I think the presentation with him, Sabu, and Bill Alfonso, Fonzie carrying the lion's share, all their charismas work together and all their auras work together to make a great presentation. But Van Dam as a promo himself, not the greatest. Now going from that, Sabu. Sadly, Sabu's going to get a 1 here. And the reason for that is, most of Sabu's career, he was a mute. He didn't speak in his promos. And when he finally did, it kind of was disappointing to me. I would have rathered him go his whole career without speaking. Kind of like I would have wanted The Undertaker to never lose the streak. Or right now, even though I find some of his podcasts very entertaining, I kind of hate seeing The Undertaker as Mark. I wish we would have just had The Undertaker be that mythical creature, kind of like Sabu. I love some of Sabu's shoot interviews, and I love the interviews he's done in talking about himself, but I kind of wish we had that aura still of just the silent Sabu. May just be me, but that's my opinion on it. When he did speak, it wasn't great, and most of the time he didn't speak, so unfortunately, he gets a 1. Next up, presentation. I'm going to give both of these guys a 5 here. Whether it be Van Dam and his ever-changing airbrush singlets, his music, whether it be Pantera in ECW, or One of a Kind in WWE, or his kind of bad theme song in TNA, the whole damn show, or whatever the heck they said. It was bad. It kind of was a hybrid between his WWE and Pantera theme, but wasn't great. With that, his singlets, his look, his iconic RVD. I mean, he was knocking it out of the park on his presentation. Just like Sabu. Even in the early days of ECW when he was brought out in the Hannibal Lecter thing, which I thought was kind of silly, he was always presented exactly how Sabu should be presented. And I mentioned this before, I've compared him to Bruiser Brody. It's very much the same. You unleash Sabu on the world. He's not your normal wrestler. He's something special. And with the genie pants, the headdress, everything about it, he didn't need the big pyrotechnics. His presentation was all about him and his aura. Whether it be the tape on the arm or him taping up his arm. Just having him come out, having him point that one finger up at the sky. That presentation was so perfect for his character. That's why he gets such a high score here. Next up, charisma. Again, we're going to give both these guys a 5. It's two totally different versions of charisma. Rob Van Dam kind of being that stoner friend, basically, in comparison to, let's say, Sean Penn's character in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, or any of the cast of Dazed and Confused, or Cheech and Chong or anything of that nature. He had that charisma that this was just a guy you kind of wanted to hang out with and maybe smoke a joint with. He drew you into himself, that little bit of cockiness he had in ECW, everything made it perfect. Now on the other hand, Sabu. Again, and I keep bringing these points up with Sabu because I think a lot of people don't recognize just how amazing Sabu was. And you kind of had to be there because a lot of the things that Sabu innovated have been copied and watered down over the last 30 years. But seeing it real time and seeing the mastery of what he did, he had a charisma where, without saying a word, without doing nothing, just him being in a ring would drive the fan base crazy. Just another amazing wrestler. Both these guys, again, get a 5 for charisma. Next up, big game performance. How they perform in pay-per-view main events, high-profile feuds, high-profile matches, as champions. And for that, again, they're both getting a 5. I keep going back to their time in ECW because it's the easiest to compare, and whether it be them as a team or them against each other or them just totally broke off, these were two of the guys that were focal points of ECW. Whether it be Van Dam's TV title run, one of Sabu's many world championship runs, I think he had 4, them as tag team champions, they were two of the guys that the company was built around. You would see Sabu versus Terry Funk, or Sabu versus Shane Douglas, or Sabu versus Funk and Douglas in a 3-way dance, or Van Dam versus Bigelow, or Sabu versus Taz. One of the selling points of Barely Legal was the Sabu and Taz match was finally going to happen. When you think of the history of ECW and you think of the big matches that happened in ECW, these two put on some of the biggest and were some of the brightest stars in the company. Both of them had a little bit of that in TNA, Van Dam a little bit more. Obviously, Van Dam had much more in WWE than Sabu did, but I don't want to discount Sabu for what I think is the promotion's shortcomings and not the man's shortcomings. Hence, they both get 5s in this category. Now let's total up their score. RVD has a total of 36, and Sabu has a total of 33, but wait, there's a bonus. And if you haven't seen my videos before, every Wednesday, I put out a poll on the community page here on YouTube asking you guys, who do you think is better? Whoever wins that poll gets a bonus 5 points. The winner of the poll this week, an overall winner, Rob Van Dam. RVD gets the 5 bonus points, giving him a total of 41 to Sabu's 33. And when you look at these two guys, they're very similar in everything they do. Van Dam had a little bit more exposure, which is why I think he probably won a popularity vote, because there are a lot of people that just didn't see Sabu. I think they're both highly influential on pro wrestling as a whole. I think they're two of the best wrestlers of their generation, two of the most innovative wrestlers I've ever seen in a ring. These guys did things that are now commonplace, but at the time were so revolutionary that it took wrestlers 5 and 10 years to catch up to what they were doing. You would often see Sabu do something on ECW, and then maybe a week or 2 later on Monday Nitro, you'd see somebody try it. Or the same with Van Dam. Just two amazing wrestlers, two guys I absolutely loved. I had a lot of fun doing this one. Stay tuned this Wednesday for the next poll, and you can have your voice heard by who you vote on in that poll. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been another Who Is Better.